In this video, we'll be doing something quite a bit different than we've done in previous tutorials. In this tutorial, we'll be using an AI coding assistant to help us build out this mobile app that can run on both Android and iOS devices. Instead of Aider, we'll be using a coding assistant called Continue. Continue runs as an IDE extension inside of VS Code. Now, although Continue lets us use any major LLM we want, whether closed source, open source, even local LLMs running on our desktops, we're going to stick with Claude 3.5 Sonnet because, frankly, Claude 3.5 is still the king when it comes to coding. So here's what we're going to do in this tutorial. First, we're going to generate a skeleton React Native app from a template. Next, we're going to start adding features to the app using the Continue coding assistant. First, we'll add a feature to let the user select an image from their device. Then we'll add another feature to allow them to submit that image to an AI vision model to generate a funny story about the image, one that includes aliens. From there, we'll add another feature that lets the user submit the funny story to an AI image generation model to generate a funny image for the funny story. Once we have all that working, we'll ask Continue to update the background of our app to give it just a little flavor. Last, we'll explore a couple of really cool Continue features I think you're going to love. For instance, creating a reusable prompt library you can use with the assistant, generating our code and project documentation using the assistant, and having Continue explain to us how all the various parts and technologies of our application work to do what they do. Now, a little disclaimer before we get started. Before about a week ago, I'd never developed a mobile app in my life. I'm a back-end engineer. So all you React Native experts out there, take it easy on me. I'm not attempting to teach mobile app development here, only to demonstrate more ways that we can leverage AI to accelerate our learning and our work. If you're planning to follow along and perform the steps in this tutorial, pause the video here and perform all the dev setup instructions at the link I provided in the video description below. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is to generate our React Native project, and the Expo framework provides a really handy way to do this. It lets us generate a starter React Native project from an Expo template. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to open a terminal and change directory to any directory where you want to place your React Native project. And then type this command, npx create Expo app, and then the name of the project. We're calling ours React Native Storyteller here. And then a -t to tell Expo we're going to give it a template. And the template we're going to use is an Expo template that creates a very basic TypeScript-based React Native application. Okay, so once Expo's done, you'll have a directory called React Native Storyteller. cd into that directory. And then let's launch that project in VS Code by running code space dot. Now let's quickly review a couple of the files Expo created for us. First of all, package.json. So package.json basically defines some metadata about our project, some scripts, and the dependencies for our project. And then the other file we want to look at is the app.tsx file. So app.tsx is the main app component written in TypeScript. This one simply defines a text component with some default text. Now we can already run our app. Simply go up to Terminal in VS Code, new terminal, and run this command, npx expo. You'll notice in the output of Expo that it gives us the option to run the app in a local simulator, either Android simulator or an iOS. If we scroll up a bit in the terminal, we'll see that Expo also generated a QR code. This is the QR code you would scan with the Expo Go app on your phone if you choose to run the mobile app that way. The detailed setup instructions I provided in the description section lay out all your options for running the app, including a reference for installing all the tools required. Any option you choose should work if you follow that guide. Now, I'm on a Mac and have access to an iOS simulator locally, so I'm going to go ahead and press I to launch the app in a simulator. If you're on a Mac and have Xcode installed, you can do the same. If not, go ahead and choose whatever launch method you prefer and start the app. Now, a couple of notes regarding the use of Expo Go app on your mobile phone that I've noticed. First, make sure your phone's connected to the same Wi-Fi network as the computer where you're doing your development. And second, if at any point the Expo Go app loses connectivity to the app running on your desktop, restart Expo Go and rescan the QR code. At least so far, this has worked for me on my Android phone. So over in VS Code, type Command or Control if you're on Windows, Shift P, look for continue open config.json, and in it you will put this section under the models section. Then you'll fill in your API key here. Now you can find this exact JSON snippet over on the Continue site at this URL. Now after you install the Continue Coding Assistant, by default you're going to see it appear in the left panel of VS Code. However, the Continue team recommends, and I found this to be very helpful, that you move it to the right so that you can see your Explorer and your code editor and also Continue all at the same time. So what we do is go up to the far upper right corner of VS Code, select Toggle Secondary Sidebar, and go back over to the Continue icon on the left and just drag it into that panel. Okay, so it's finally time to start adding features to our app. We're going to use Continue to help us add all the features. The first one's going to be allowing the user to select an image from their phone. So what we're going to do is I'm going to highlight all the code in the app.tsx file. And then I'm going to use the Command I to bring up a prompt that I can provide it. Now I'm going to paste in this prompt. This prompt says, update the app to allow the user to select an image from their device. Display the selected image on the screen. And I'm going to hit return. So Continue goes and analyzes the code and makes the changes, or suggested changes, and then it allows us options to reject or accept the changes. I'm going to go ahead and select Accept All. Okay, so it's modified the code for us. I'm going to save that. And now we see that in our simulator, we have a Select Image button that allows the user to select images. So even though our app's working, the IDE is still complaining about one particular problem, and that problem is argument of type string is not assignable to parameter of type set state action. So let's see if we can get Continue to fix this for us. I'm just going to go ahead and select all the code again, and I'm going to right click and select Continue, fix this code. So Continue is analyzing the code for issues. It's again recommending changes, giving us the opportunity to accept all or accept certain ones or reject all. I'm going to go ahead and accept all and Continue. Looks like it's fixed our issue. I'm going to go ahead and save the file, make sure that our app's still working. And as we can see over in the simulator, it's still working and our error is gone. Next, we're going to add a feature to the app that lets the user ask for a funny story about the image they selected. So first, what we're going to do is we're going to add a button called Make Up a Funny Story to the app. To do that, again, I'm going to highlight all of the code in app.tsx. Again, I'm going to use the Command I, and I'm going to enter a new prompt. Add a button below the image that says Make Up a Funny Story. I'm going to hit return. And once again, Continue does its magic, makes the updates to our app. You can see it making the updates, suggesting the updates. And again, we have the ability to accept or reject. I'm just going to select Accept All. So here we have our updates. I'm going to save the file. And now we see we have a Make Up a Funny Story button. Doesn't do anything yet. So now we need to add the functionality behind the Make Up a Funny Story button. So to do that, instead of having Continue make in-place code edits to our code, this time we're going to use Continue's chat prompt. Again, over here, make sure that you have Claude 3.5 Sonnet selected here. And what we're going to do is we're going to add files for context for Continue. First, we're going to right-click on the app.tsx file, and we're going to say Select Files as Context. And you'll notice that now this file has been added to the context for Continue in the chat. And we'll also go ahead and add the package.json file because some dependencies might help in making the updates, and select files as context. Now I'm going to give it this prompt, and it's a little bit longer prompt. Create code to submit a chat to OpenAI's chat or GPT-4 LLM. I'd like this code to live in a separate file, separate from app.tsx. I also want any changes required to invoke this chat when the user selects the previously added button in the app, and I hit return. And now Continue suggesting a new file called OpenAI service.ts, which is going to contain all of the code for interfacing with OpenAI's APIs. And then it's going to suggest the changes to our existing app.tsx file so it can actually call the functions in this new file. So scrolling back up to the top of the chat, it suggests that we create a new file called OpenAI service.ts. I'm going to create this new file, open it up, and now my cursor's inside the new file, and there's an option with continue to just insert this code that is suggested at the cursor. So I'll do that and save it. You'll notice that we're missing an Axios dependency. We'll take care of that in just a moment. And now it's suggesting the changes to the app.tsx file, so we'll go ahead and open that. And it looks like it is giving us partial. So I'm going to actually ask it for the full updated code for app.tsx. Give me the full new code for app.tsx. There are many ways to do this. I'm just showing you one. This works well for small files. If you're working with a larger file, I wouldn't recommend doing this way. I would probably do it surgically. Okay, so it looks like it's now giving us the full new file with the existing code and the new changes. So here's what I'm going to do. Again, this is not always the way to go here, but I'm just going to go ahead and highlight and delete the full contents of the existing app.tsx. And again, I'm going to go back up to the top of this. I'm going to select Insert at Cursor, and I'm going to save this file. Now, yes, we're missing a dependency. If we scroll back down to the output, or back up to the initial output for our prompt, it says we're going to need to install Axios. So what I'm going to do is copy this command using continuous copy. I'm going to go back over to the terminal where we have been installing our packages. Let me do this for now. And I'm going to paste that command, npm install Axios. Okay. So now Axios is installed. And it says we also should update our package.json to include Axios. So we'll open package.json. And under dependencies, we're going to copy. Oh, it's actually already updated it for us. So I think we're good. All right. Okay, so let's test this out real quick. We'll go back into our app, select an image, select a waterfall, choose the image, make up a funny story. Oh, let's see. Let's go back to our Expo output. It says error generating a story failed with a status code of 401. So that's an access exception. Let's go ahead and take a look at the OpenAI service function. And we'll see here that it's expecting an OpenAI API key here. So I'm going to go ahead and update it with my OpenAPI key. You can update it with your API key, and then we'll resume from there. And one thing I noticed while reviewing the OpenAI service.ts file was that it used GPT-4, not GPT-4o mini. And that's because the training cutoff date for Claude 3.5 was before OpenAI released the 4o mini model. So I'm just going to go ahead and update this in place. GPT-4o mini. You'll need to use one of these models, not the original GPT-4, because you need vision capability, which the original GPT-4 does not have. So I'm going to update that, save the file, and let's try this again. I'll just keep the same image, make up a funny story. Okay, now I get a story. Whether you think it's funny or not, LLMs aren't known for their humor, but I do get a story. I want to change one more thing while we're in here. I like to have it use an alien theme for the stories it makes up. So I'm going to go into the OpenAI service.ts file, and I'm just going to update the system prompt. I'm going to overwrite this, which was generated by continue with this new prompt. By the way, I'll provide all the prompts, links to the prompts in the description. Make up a funny story about this image, make up alien characters, and include them as characters in the story. I'll save that. Let's go back to the app again. Make up a funny story. Okay, so now it looks like it's using alien things. Once upon a time in the vibrant land of Zoglorp, where the skies rained jelly beans, lived two mischief-making aliens named Flonk and Zibbles. If you're interested in more in-depth coaching on using AI in your own software development projects or to accelerate your learning, I offer both individual and small group sessions. Please check out the link in the description below. Now for this next feature, we're going to flip things around a little bit. Instead of generating text from an image, we're going to take the story text that the LLM generated for us and feed it into DALL-E 3 and ask it to generate a funny image for our funny story. So the way we're going to do that is this. I'm going to open the app.tsx file, going to select everything inside it. I'm going to hit Command-I, and I'm going to give it this prompt. Add a button below the story text generated by GPT-4 that says, create a funny image, and hit return. Okay, we can see some changes that it's made. It's add the button for us. So we're going to say accept all, save the file. And now we can see we have a create funny image button below our text. And it doesn't do anything yet except for print to the console. So the next part is we actually need to get the text to DALL-E 3 so it can generate the image. So the proper place for that logic is in the OpenAI service.ts script. So what we're going to do here is very similar to what we did with app.ts. We're going to select the entire contents of this file, Command-I again, and now I'm going to give it this prompt for edit. Add the ability to allow the user to submit the story generated by GPT-4o mini model to OpenAI's DALL-E 3 model and ask it to create a new funny image for the story. And I hit enter. And it's created a new function in that file. And we can select accept all. And don't worry, I'll deactivate this key before this recording goes live. So I will save. So far we have a button and we have the functionality to call DALL-E 3, but we haven't connected up the button and the call to the new function. So here we're going to do something a little bit different than we've been doing so far. What we're going to do here is because we have functionality in one file that needs to be invoked, and we have a button in another file that needs to invoke that logic, we're just going to add these two files to continuous context so it can focus on these two and have all the knowledge it needs to help us connect these things up. So I'm going to use continuous files function to add OpenAI service.ts and then also add, not the whole code base, sorry, files, to add the app.tsx file. And then we're going to continue this prompt. When the user presses the Create Funny Image button, the Generate Image function will be called to create an image for the story, and the app displays the image below the new button. Okay, so it goes through and it gives us the updates for the app.tsx file to hook the button into the new functionality. And we can see again here it's giving us partial updates and then expecting us to plug these into the script. But I'm going to go ahead and ask it, like I have before, just give me the full version of app.tsx. Okay, so it's going to give us the entire version with the new updates included. So we have the full version of it. It explains to us exactly what it does now. And what we're going to do is, like we've done before, is I'm going to app.tsx. I'm going to select all, delete. Then I'm going to go back up here to the top of this new code. I'm going to use continues inserted cursor function, and I'm going to save the file. Now let's see what we have. Select an image, generate a funny story, and we have our funny story. We have a create funny image button. We click on that, and now we have our image generated for our story by DALL-E 3. Voila. Our app's pretty neat, but it's kind of boring. The background's just kind of plain white and gray. So let's see if we can snazz it up just a little bit by adding a gradient background to it. So the way we're going to do this is back over in a new continue chat. I'm going to use the files feature again, and I'm going to add just the app.tsx file, and I'm going to give it this prompt. Add a cool gradient background to the screen to give it a bit of a pop. Here it tells us we're going to need to install a new package called Expo Linear Gradient. I'm going to go ahead and then ignore that for the moment and get to the code changes. Again, it's giving us partial code changes, and we would have to kind of find where we inject this stuff. And so instead of doing that, since it's a fairly simple file, I'm just going to say, give me the full updated contents. Okay, so once again, I'm just going to select everything in that file, delete it, go back up and use continues insert at prompt feature, insert at cursor. I'm going to save this. we can already see that we have an import missing, Expo linear gradient. So back here, we saw that continue gave us a hint about that, actually gave us the exact command we need to run, Expo install Expo linear gradient. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy that, go to our other terminal where we've been installing our dependencies, going to run that, and now we're good again. It installed our dependencies, everything's resolved, and now we have a better looking background. Now I wanted to show you another feature of most AI coding assistants, including Continue, and that's the code autocomplete. So we're not actually going to need to use this in this particular tutorial, but I wanted you to be aware of it. So one thing that I can do with this is I can add a code comment to the app.tsx file, and I can just have a comment that says function that logs a given message to the console. And then if I hit return, now Continue is trying to guess at the function signature. So it's going to say function log message. If I hit tab, it'll complete that and then return. And then it's guessing at the implementation. If I hit tab, that's accepting it basically, and I can save. And then if I wanted to use this new function somewhere, let's say that here I wanted to use that function to log the generated story to the console. I can say log and then generated story. Okay, so that's the autocomplete feature. You can do a whole lot with that, and you'll probably use that a whole bunch as you build up code bases more and more and more. Another really awesome thing you can do with Continue is you can have it document your code. So over here, we're going to open up the OpenAI service.ts file. And what we're going to do is I'm going to highlight a function, this first generate story function. I'll just highlight this, the entire thing. And then I can right click, select continue, write a doc string for this code. So typically I find it does an outstanding job of creating the documentation. How about having Continue help explain this to us since we're new React Native developers? Let's go over here, open up I'll create a new session. And so what we're going to do is, again, we'll use the files feature. Well, let's do it a different way this time. So another way to add files to the chat context is to use the Explorer menu and simply right click and say select files as context. And then I can select another select files as context, and I'll go ahead and add the package.json as well. Select files as context. And why not, I'll add app.json as well. Okay, so now this chat session has those 4 files in its context. And what I'll ask it here is to explain it to us. Explain this app. I'm new to React Native development. Explain what's going on here. What are these components and how do they work together? And here we get a very nice explanation of what each of these different files does within the context of the application. Explains all of the different functions and the features and so forth, and also the technologies. Another really useful feature of Continue is your ability to add custom prompts. And what you do is you create a prompts file in the .prompts directory inside your project, and then Continue picks them up. Here I've created my own custom prompt for generating README files in the format containing the kind of content I like to see in my project README files. So how to use this? I can start a session with Continue. I can type / and then I'll have access to all of my custom prompts. So I can select create README. Now I can add some files to context because it's going to need context. That's this input variable here. So I'll type @files, and I will search for the app.tsx file. I'll add that to my context, and I'll search for the OpenAI service.ts, and let's go ahead and add the package.json as well. And so now this create README has all 3 of these files as its input context, and I just hit enter. And I end up with a really nice README file that covers all the bases that I want covered. Now, I also created one, we won't demonstrate those all here, I also created one that will generate plant UML syntax, a component diagram for plant UML. And then I have another one for refactoring the code or suggesting refactorings to the code base that I can also call in the same way in chat sessions with Continue. In this video, we explored another AI coding assistant, Continue, which is an extension that runs inside your IDE. That contrasts with Aider's IDE agnostic terminal-based approach. Now, I personally use both Aider and Continue, and I occasionally experiment with other AI coding assistants as well. The point is that there are many different tools and approaches for leveraging AI in your software development workflow. Now, AI is certainly no substitute for learning languages, frameworks, and proper engineering practices, but it can accelerate your learning process and your software development lifecycle. The key is to learn the fundamentals of the current core generative AI technologies, and to learn to think in ways that allow you to experiment and learn quickly, regardless of the AI coding assistant you're using. This core understanding, which you have to learn through a combination of study and many repetitions doing this stuff, is far more valuable than any particular tool or LLM. I hope you found this video helpful, and I hope it helps you to start building some fun mobile apps with an assist from AI. There are other tutorials on this channel that show how to build other types of apps using AI. If you found the topics in this video interesting, you'll likely enjoy those as well. If you'd like to see more videos on this or similar topics, please let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, please give a like and subscribe. I'm Tim Kitchens, coding the future with you, and I look forward to seeing you in future videos.